Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Unleashed. I'll preface today's episode with this. If being attacked and called names is a consequence of what I'm about to say, so be it. I don't care. The truth needs to be exposed for our kids. We are on the precipice of the government taking so much control of our kids' hearts, minds, and futures. And if they succeed, it will leave scars that they may never heal from. Today's guest is proof of that. So I hope this episode shakes you and wakes you up to just how out of control our state has gotten. Our politicians, government leaders, media, and even some doctors, nurses, and teachers have literally gone mad. Well, I'm not sure if you recall in the last debate in the governor's race, but Jared Polis called me a mad mom, which I am. I am a mad mom, and I am not alone. There is an army of parents in our state that are waking up to the government's takeover of our most precious thing, our kids. Remember when Hillary Rodham Clinton said it takes a village to raise a child? Well, that sounded innocent enough. It's great to have a support system as a parent. But I believe that Clinton's comments, they were nefarious. That when she references the village, what she's really talking about is the state, our government, the bureaucrats, the power players, the big money people. What she wants is to shift the responsibility of raising our children from us parents to the government so they can groom future voters and future activists.
There's no such thing as someone else's child. No such thing as someone else's child. Our nation's children are all our children.
Everywhere we look right now, parents' rights are eroding and the government is taking more and more control away from us. This became glaringly apparent during the COVID lockdowns. As our kids joined classes for nearly a year via Zoom, parents got a front row seat to the anti-American sentiment sweeping our nation, from the manipulation and self-loathing taught by our public schools to the peer pressure to join social justice movements all over social media. Our children were taught by teachers, TikTok stars, creepy supposed friends they'd never met on Snapchat, or even drag star puppets that they didn't have to be a boy or girl. They could decide, and parents didn't need to know. Children were taught to be terrified of a virus and that they would kill their grandma if they didn't obey a long list of rules like social distancing, mask wearing, or getting an experimental vaccine. Children were taught that drugs are okay, especially pot. Children are being taught about sexuality and gender fluidity as young as kindergarten and exposed to explicit pornography through school-sponsored drag shows, Netflix, and social media. Children were taught that science is what the government tells you it is, and if you challenge it, you'll be canceled. Children are being taught that the government can control the climate, the weather, and the universe. Just give them more money. They'll handle it. Children were not taught how to read, write, or do math. 60% of kids in Colorado still can't read, write, or do math at grade level. 60%. One of the blessings of COVID restrictions was that the curtain was pulled back from the sinister going-ons in so many of our schools. It seems that Colorado Democrats, including our governor, wholeheartedly believe that their power over our children is a priority over that of the parents, educators too in some cases. They seem to believe that our children are their possession and the responsibility of the government, not the parents. They are coming for our kids. They're coming for our kids through screens, enchanting our kids through TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, and Netflix shows that glamorize suicide and changing your gender through surgery or dangerous drugs. Here's an example. Mr. Beast, a very popular YouTuber with 148 million subscribers, makes kid-focused videos like pranks, over-the-top challenges, and reaction videos. Ask any young kid if they know who he is, and they've likely binge-watched most of his 700-plus videos. He even has a chocolate brand. Well, one of his closest friends and right hand in most of the videos, Chris Tyson, has recently come out as being on hormone replacement therapy and is publicly transitioning, as well as some recent tweets that reveal he has some disturbing interest in anime porn that features people who appear to be minors. Stuff is scary. They are also coming for our kids through drugs. Pot, Adderall, Xanax, vaping, fentanyl, heroin, opioids. Colorado has one of the highest drug addiction rates for kids in the country. Yet we keep fooling ourselves, and Jared Polis keeps fooling us into thinking that pot is just fine. Mushrooms are just fine. Drugs are fine for our kids. It's not fine. They are numb and sad and addicted and in a mental health crisis. And how are we dealing with this mental health crisis? More drugs, antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds like SSRIs and stimulants, which have all been linked to driving violence in some teens, even suicide or school shootings. I've had some personal experience with this when my oldest daughter was diagnosed with chronic migraines in college, likely stress-induced, but she was prescribed Topamax by our family doctor. My happy-go-lucky daughter suddenly became noticeably irritable, agitated, and even later told me she was having weird suicidal thoughts, despite not being depressed or suicidal at all. Just had some migraines. A perfectly safe medication could have had fatal effects, and we're seeing this more and more. They are coming for our kids in our schools, indoctrinating our children using gender confusion and sex talk in as little as first grade, hiding gender transitions that are often encouraged by teachers and school advisors, mocking our faith, replacing our American flag with the social justice flag of the day, allowing books in our school libraries that talk about incest and blowjobs, telling our children they are defined by the color of their skin over their character, usurping our rights as parents and keeping secrets from us, taking out school resource officers, and keeping violent students at school without consequences. They're coming for our kids through radical medical experimentation, letting our children get psychotherapy without our knowledge or restricting access to their conversations with our 12-year-old children, letting our kids get abortions, mastectomies, puberty blockers, removing or manipulating their genitals without our approval. Here in Colorado, these are our babies. Just 2 weeks ago, Jared Polis, our governor, signed a trans tourism law to ensure people in other states can come to Colorado for an abortion at any age, can begin puberty blockers or receive sex change operations and mastectomies without fear of any prosecution. In other words, children seduced by transgender ideology in Kansas or other states where lawmakers are preparing to ban interventions for minors, they may travel to Colorado for radical sterilizing procedures under Polis's protection. They will not notify parents. It's a first of its kind in America, one that Jared Polis is proud to taunt in Colorado, saying, "I'm excited by the work of advocates and legislators to further Colorado's reputation as a beacon of freedom, a beacon of choice, a beacon of individuality, where we live on our own terms." This new law comes as transgender surgeries are expected to become a $5 billion industry by the end of the decade. The Colorado Senate also signed a bill last week titled Protections for Accessing Reproductive Health Care. That allows children to abort pregnancies without parental consent. Jared Polis actually started this effort many years ago, between working with the Twisted Foundation and sitting on the State Board of Education starting in 2008. He's been quietly encouraging legislation and weaving in new rulemaking through his agencies to move the needle on this. Here's how my own kids came face to face with his efforts to transform Colorado families a decade later. One day in the fall of 2018, almost 5 years ago, my first grade twins and my third grade daughter told me about some videos they'd seen at school that day. The school showed our children, from kindergarten to fifth grade, videos that told them it was just fine to choose if you want to be a boy or girl, and you don't have to tell your parents if you change your mind. And that traditional gender roles are mean, they are not fun, and they are big problems. Literally, quote unquote, said that. Later that week, to make matters even worse, they put on a stage play that portrayed a baby bird getting a sex change operation. After watching these videos, outraged parents wondered why such highly controversial and divisive topics were forced upon our young children. One parent told CBS 4 Denver, "The lesson goes beyond a simple message of tolerance and acceptance. We support tolerance and acceptance, but this is simply not age appropriate. This goes far beyond a bullying program." Well, Randy Barber, a school district spokesman at the time, insisted that these videos and the stage play were age appropriate. He said, "We really don't believe that you can be too young to learn about inclusivity and differences in the community." Even more shocking to many parents was their discovery that Boulder Valley schools had been lying and trying to indoctrinate their kids for years without their consent or knowing. BVSD reportedly paid tens of thousands of dollars for its whole staff to be trained on a Queer Endeavor, a program in the CU Boulder Department of Education that teaches school administrations how to embed LGBTQ worldviews into curriculum, a process they call queering the curriculum. They have trained thousands of teachers in St. Vrain, Boulder Valley, and Adams 12 school districts, just to name a few. After this happened, I decided to work with the Ascent Charter Team to launch a classical charter school in Boulder Valley School District, which had not approved a new charter school in almost 20 years. We worked for 18 months talking to families about our mission and had over 700 kids interested when we took it to the school board. The school board accused us of all kinds of ridiculous things and denied the application. One of the most ridiculous accusations was they told us we had no right to open a school because many of us were part of this group of parents who didn't like our first graders learning about a sex change operation at Superior Elementary School. Serious. Ascent went through 2 different appeals with the State Board of Education, but ultimately the entrenched interests and the teachers' unions, they won. These bureaucrats prevented over 700 students in the Boulder area from receiving a tuition-free, high-quality choice in education. That was right in Jared Polis's backyard. He didn't lift a finger to help. How's that for so-called school choice in Colorado? Hundreds of families, including my own, were left heartbroken. I realized at this point I needed to talk with my feet, so we moved the family to Douglas County. Since 2019, the slippery slope to control our kids has gotten even more slippery. Colorado House Bill 19-1120 was signed into law, which lowered the age of consent for psychotherapy services from 15 years old to 12 years old, with or without the consent of a parent. Now, a new 2023 bill takes us much farther, and it specifies that a student 12 years of age or older may consent to participate in a new, intrusive, state-developed mental health assessment screening that asks inappropriate and invasive questions, even if the student's parents opt them out. And then they can refer them to therapy without the parents. In Colorado, 7% of students have attempted suicide in the last year. 17% seriously considered suicide, and 20% purposely harmed themselves. That's from a survey in 2021. We have one of the highest suicide rates for teens in the whole country. At a time when our children are in dire danger here, rather than focusing on giving parents more control over their child's education, mental health, and their well-being, Colorado politicians are cutting parents out of our children's lives. Our kids are not okay. And if our kids are not okay, nothing is okay. Yet we are being told as parents to shut up because we're being mean to various oppressed communities if we push back on these things. Just shut up. The majority of us, we don't care what you do as an adult. You can call yourself whatever you want and dress however you want. But if you are advocating to send young children into life-altering surgeries that sterilize and disfigure them for life and hiding it from their parents, that's where we draw the line. You're not allowed to do that. It's illegal, it's immoral, it's disgusting. So is teaching first graders about sex change operations. So is hosting a drag show for small children. So is reading them books with pornographic images or having those in the school library. I don't care what you call me or if you tweet obscenities at me. I'm not going to be quiet about this. It's not okay. Do you think it's an accident that the number of transgender youths doubled in the last 5 years? And children's mastectomies are up 389%. 389%. That is a radical agenda that's being pushed on our kids. We need to bravely stand up, speak out, and tell everybody, hey, the emperor is naked. Somebody needs to say it. This mad mom will do it all day long. Listen, I'm all for, how did Jared Polis put it, a beacon of individuality where we live on our own terms. You do you and I'll do me. Just stay away from our kids. I'm not anti anyone that does their own thing. But when you cross the line and harm our children or try and take control of my children, I'm anti that all day long. Since Jared Polis became our governor, he has led the effort to bring the discussion of sex and gender into our elementary schools. He won't say it publicly, but he's behind it. Polis has led the effort to make abortion okay in the final weeks of pregnancy, up to a baby's birth date, even for minors from out of state, and advocating keeping it secret from parents. Polis has led the effort to let 12-year-old children that are dealing with complex mental health issues get psychotherapy without their parents involved. Polis has led the effort to send out surveys to our kids with deeply personal questions about your children and about your family life without parent permission. Polis has led the effort to allow minor-aged children to come to Colorado to have mastectomies, to have penis and vagina deconstruction and construction, and receive hormone blockers that forever change these babies. We are living in Orwell's 1984. There was truth and there was untruth. And if you clung to the truth, even against the whole world, you were not mad. Cling to the truth, parents. Do not give in to this madness. Next up, we're going to talk to Oli London, a well-known activist and author, to speak his truth about his story of gender dysphoria and finding peace through faith. Hello, everyone. I am so excited and honored to have Oli London on the show with us today. Oli, you are an incredible activist. You have quite a story. I'd like to start with you telling our listening audience a little bit about how you got to this point.
Hey, Heidi. Firstly, it's great to be here, and thank you so much to all of the listeners for tuning in. So everything with me started as a young kid. I had issues with gender dysphoria. I was a lot more feminine. I liked girls' toys. And, some kids are like that. We have some girls that are tomboys, and that's perfectly normal. And then when I became a teenager, I started to get bullied a lot because of my feminine traits and because of the way I looked. So that really affected me. And then also my father was a very kind of alpha male, very dominant, and he wasn't nice to my mother. He wasn't nice to me. So that really made me become closer to my mother and, empathize more with women and feel more feminine. And then what happened throughout my teenage years, I used to get bullied for the way I looked. People would mock me saying I had women's breasts because I used to have quite fat chest. So I used to get mocked a lot, and it really affected my self-confidence. And then it grew into body dysmorphia. So I struggled basically with the way I looked. And as an adult, I started doing surgeries just to try and improve myself. And then it became a really unhealthy obsession with trying to transform myself. And I was living in Korea, and I was, trying to model myself on, the K-pop kind of look because I thought that was a nice look. And I was never happy. And I kept doing things to myself. I kept basically mutilating myself, changing all my bones. I have metal screws in my face now. And I wasn't happy. And then throughout my life, I had so many people saying I was more like a girl, I was more feminine. So that ultimately led me to think that maybe these people are right and maybe, I should be trans.
Well, Oli, I have so much compassion for kids who are suffering and struggling with these issues. And I think, parents really need to be part of the conversation. And in Colorado, they've made some drastic changes to our laws recently that allow children to make decisions, big decisions, some of the ones that you made without their parents involved. How do you feel about that?
It's absolutely tragic to see that. And Colorado has basically become a tourist destination for trans tourism. So, kids and teens from neighboring states that may have laws banning gender affirming care on minors, they can now travel. Even without their parents, they can travel to Colorado to be put on hormones, to be put on puberty blockers, and even have gender reassignment surgery. It's absolutely abhorrent. It's like a big science experiment that's being conducted on these kids. And there's not enough research talking about the long-term health effects. In my upcoming book, I have done some research on the few studies out there that basically say that, long-term hormone use can lead to issues with bone growth. It can stunt the growth of children. It can lead to a 6 times of an increase in heart attacks and heart murmurs and also blood clots as well. And performing these surgeries, changing the body so drastically on someone so young is incredibly damaging. We hear so many stories of detransitioners explaining the agony they're going through because of the transition they've been through. And it's really heartbreaking. So, my heart goes out to all of the parents that are struggling right now in Colorado and neighboring states that, their kids are basically being pushed into this, and some parents are against it, and their kids are being taken by other people to Colorado to transition. So, it's really alarming. And, there's a lot of pushback from Republican states. And what Colorado's done is particularly dangerous.
I agree. And, our governor likes to pretend he's all about, individual liberties and freedom and keeping control with the family, with the local communities. And he seems to be doing the exact opposite without a lot of fanfare. And I think it's really important to raise awareness about this, to alert parents that this is going on, and to make them aware that there's a lot of things happening in the schools, too, that parents aren't knowledgeable about or that are happening behind the scenes, like administrators and teachers keeping lists of kids who are transitioning and not telling the parents. I just don't think that's the right approach. Anytime you're lying to parents, it's not a good thing. Now, I understand that there's some parents who may not be supportive, and we've got to help kids, address that, deal with it. But Oli, how do you help children who are really struggling in the schools or with their friends that maybe don't feel comfortable talking to their parents about it? How should schools and communities deal with that?
Well, many teenagers do go through struggles as they're going through puberty. It's perfectly normal for them to want to question themselves, but it's not a teacher's job to change a child's identity. And it's also not a teacher's job to hide that from the parents. And granted, like you said, there are some parents that might not have any compassion for their kids going through these struggles. But at the end of the day, it's not the teacher's job to push this, especially if the teacher is promoting this in the classroom, introducing these concepts of gender ideology when the kids wouldn't be thinking about that. But, counseling is important. If there is a school counselor or therapist, that's important for kids to have someone to speak to if they don't feel they can speak to their parents. But the problem we're seeing with many of these woke schools is the counselors are the ones affirming the child's gender identity. They're basically telling the kid, a kid's going through depression or other struggles, mental health struggles, or struggling with puberty. The counselors are telling them, you are in the wrong gender. We must change your pronouns. We must give you a new name. So that's the real issue. We need to remove this policy because these counselors should be kind of non-biased. They shouldn't be pushing these ideas on kids. Listen to the kids, listen to their problems, try to give them helpful advice and guide them, but don't give them instructions on how to change your gender. Some schools even provide, teachers or counselors provide these chest binders for girls. That's incredibly harmful, and especially when the parents have no idea, because most parents are very loving. They just want the best for their kids. But when this is happening behind their backs, that's the real harm.
Yeah, and parents are starting to speak out about it in Colorado and across the country. And I did on the campaign trail, and we get called lots of names. We get called anti all kinds of things, and that we're terrible human beings for not wanting our children to be taught this stuff at a very young age. And my twins were taught in first grade. They were actually taught what a sex change operation was, and taught that they could be a he or she without telling their parents about if they wanted to change that. It was very upsetting because I was being left out of the conversation, because the school decided to have these delicate conversations with my little ones without me knowing. And I didn't think it was appropriate at that age. A lot of parents didn't think it was appropriate. We spoke out and we just got vilified. And I have so much compassion for these children if they are struggling, but I believe this has to be a conversation with the parents first.
I mean, that's an absolute horror story. First grade children being taught how to have a sex change. Why are we teaching that to kids? Florida's been leading the way in banning this in the classrooms. And, like what you had to deal with, Governor DeSantis and Republicans have been called transphobic. The bill has been dubbed unfairly, don't say gay. When really it's just about keeping these ideas, like you said, with first graders being taught about gender ideology. It's just not necessary. It's incredibly harmful because we have to remember that kids learn from adults. Kids look up to adults as a role model. So if you have a teacher that's your favorite teacher, they're telling you, you can be transgender, change your gender. That kid is going to want to do what their hero, their teacher, is telling them, right? So that's an incredibly harmful conversation. So I think, Florida's leading the way in terms of banning this in the classroom. I think we need all states to have some kind of policy that protects kids from this. And, when kids become adults, it's up to them what they want to do. It's, if they felt trapped their whole life, that's generally up to them. But we can't be pushing this on kids who many of which wouldn't think about these things. Many of these kids weren't questioning their gender identity. 10, 20 years ago, people didn't really question it. And now suddenly you've got so many groups of kids in every single school wanting to transition, wanting to be on hormones. It's a real push. And it starts with the education system pushing this on kids, the gender clinics that are promoting this to kids. harmful influencers like Dylan Mulvaney and other people. It's a real concerted push to do this to kids. We just need it out of the classroom and just leave the kids alone.
It's very subtle messaging, and they try and, say, well, it was age appropriate. It's not age appropriate if my first graders come home and get what they were being taught about. And it was just shocking to me. This was 6 or 7 years ago, so kind of before all the trends started. This was in Boulder Valley School District, so Boulder's, where a lot of woke starts. But I hope that we can get back to some kind of common sense policy in the classroom and in our communities where a lot of these decisions and conversations are left to the parents and the families and, those who know the children best. And I hope this isn't put on teachers going forward. I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, I agree. And you made a great point there. What they're doing is they're making it so subtle. So you go to a school library, or even a drag story hour, and the books, you've got cute little animals, cute little cartoons. It looks so nice and innocent. But when you actually look at the contents, it's subtly indoctrinating these kids with ideas that they shouldn't be thinking about. You have school libraries that have books on sex positions for kids. It's really, really wrong. And that's how they're doing it. It's subtlety. I mean, now they're being a little bit more overt than they may have been when your kids were in first grade. But now it's really being pushed with all the drag story times and stuff. But that's how they're doing it. They're pushing it through these kind of subtle things. Oh, it's totally innocent. And that's the same argument for drag story hour. Look, drag's been around for a long time. Adults want to see drag. That's absolutely fine. But why is there this concerted push to get drag queens in the classroom, to read these books about changing your gender, teaching kids how to be a drag queen? It's just harmful and it's not necessary. And again, parents and kids are the only ones that should be speaking on these issues, and it should not be in the classroom.
And I think it's shocking that we think it's okay for people in scantily clad outfits to be dancing and flaunting their body parts, whether it's drag or any kind of performance like that, without parents being involved, without families engaging. And some families choose to take their kids there. That's their decision. But it's not about LGBTQ or trans. It's about sexuality and gender. And I don't want my kids in first grade learning anything about sex without me having the ability to be in the conversation as a mom, as a parent, straight, gay, trans, anything. And so I think it's getting back to honoring the parents' role in the family and honoring our children's innocence and letting them be kids and letting them avoid these really overt conversations until they're older and more mature and can handle it. Oli, one thing I wanted you to talk a little bit about is your journey to your faith. I saw that you've become a Christian and that you're considering getting baptized. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so baptism is definitely going to happen this year. I've been fully going to church now for around 7 months. Interestingly, as a kid, when I went to elementary school, I did go to a Church of England school. So, we did have to go to church. It was part of the curriculum. And, I had some very fond memories. But as I became a teenager and adult, I lost complete touch with that. But it wasn't until I had kind of a turning point in my life, which was late last year, when I just realized, everything I was doing was so self-destructive, and it was also harming people around me. It was harming my family, harming my friends. It was harming people that follow me online. I have a lot of young fans, and it's really, I need to be a role model. And I saw what I was doing, and I actually took a moment to reflect. I went to church, I took some time out, I left my phone at home, I turned off TikTok, and just took some time to reflect. And that was a really powerful thing, to think that there's more to life than this. There's more to life than me obsessing over my identity. I need to stop this now. It's hurting people. It's hurting me. I need to try and fix this problem, because I'm trying to deal with past traumas. I'm trying to deal with the bullying I used to experience. I need to tackle that. I need to come to terms with that and realize that this is not the solution. Mutilating myself in the name of identity is not the solution. So, I had that kind of revelation, and it's been very empowering, because that's really what sparked me to start doing all of this activism, even to write the book. Because before that, I was, making TikTok videos, I was making comedy YouTube videos, K-pop music videos, and, it had no real meaning and purpose. But now it's really awakened me, becoming Christian, to have a purpose and actually think, there's people in the world that need somebody to help them. There's people that need a voice or reason.
Well, that's beautiful. And I'm very happy to hear that. You're a beautiful person inside and out. And I'd love to hear some words of wisdom or encouragement from you to parents who have kids that are struggling or kids that might be watching that are struggling as well.
Well, it's very hard for any parent to see their teenager struggle. And, for all of us as a teenager, I'm sure we can all remember times that were difficult. It's a very confusing time, especially when you're starting middle school or high school. You have to make new friends. There's a lot of bullying involved and stuff. So, I think parents need to be more aware of what's going on in school, because sometimes kids will hide that from the parent. They don't want the parent to know. But I think, parents always need to be at the school board meetings. They need to be, meeting the teachers. They need to be checking on their kids' homework and seeing what they're learning in school. What textbooks are they reading? Because, like we said earlier, some of these things are very subtle. They're trying to push these things. They're giving kids questionnaires about gender and pronouns. So parents need to take a closer look at what's being taught. And also, I know it's probably really difficult for any parent, but try to keep your kids off social media if possible. I'm sure they're going to protest and rebel, and it's a very hard thing to do that as a parent, because all kids, they want to be on their phone, but I think that's really harmful. It's really, I grew up before social media, and as did you. And, it's very toxic, because you spend your whole life wanting validation. You look at other people and you think, why can't I be like them? And then, when you start getting likes and validation, especially if you're sharing a transition online, it makes you feel good. So that's encouraging that behavior. So I just think for parents, try to keep your kids off TikTok and Instagram. Have them outside playing soccer, going hiking, going camping, fun things like that. It's probably really difficult for parents, but just try that.
It is. It's a constant battle every day. I've got 4 kids. One of them's older, but the 3 young ones, it's like a constant negotiation. And as parents, you have to understand the technology to be able to manage it, which I just spent a couple hours at the Apple store going, how do I stop this stuff?
Right. I mean, kids are so smart with technology. The parents don't always know. These kids can get access to all these apps. And we have with TikTok. TikTok is meant to be, you can't have an account if you're under 13. But there are so many millions of kids under 13 that are accessing accounts, and you just change your birth date. Kids are smart. They can access these things. So it is hard for a parent.
Yeah, it is. I can attest to that. Oli, I know you're up to some really big things this week. Can you tell us about your announcement and how it parlays into Colorado?
Yeah, so I'm very excited to being announced as a spokesperson for Caitlyn Jenner's new political action committee, Fairness First, which is basically helping to protect women's sports, making sure that, biological men who have an unfair advantage, it's not about being transphobic or trying to disclude anyone. It's simply about the fact that biological men do have a significant advantage in sports. So it's, trying to come up with a solution to help everyone feel happy. Protecting women's spaces as well is very important with Fairness First and their mission. And also, Fairness First will be doing work in Colorado because, as we mentioned earlier, Colorado has now signed into law with the governor signing into law the bill to basically allow kids from other states to come to the state and medically transition. So there'll be a lot of focus on that. I know there's some other upcoming bills as well. So Fairness First will be focusing on that. And, it's really an empowering political action committee because it's helping women, it's helping kids, and these are fundamental for any society to be healthy and happy. So, people can go to fairnessfirst.us to find out about the work, to get involved in upcoming campaigns, Senate testimonies, how they can share on social media, and people can also donate there as well because it's a really important cause. So I'm very honored to be working with Caitlyn to try and protect women and to try and stop the indoctrination of kids in the school system.
That's very exciting. As the mom of 3 daughters who all play sports, and I grew up playing sports, we fought so long and so hard for the ability to play in a fair game. And it's just being stripped away right now. And I just, my heart breaks for amazing women athletes across the country that are dealing with this right now. So hopefully you have a lot of success with this new organization, and kudos to Caitlyn Jenner for putting it together and for having you be a spokesperson. That's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you. It's going to help a lot of people. And, Caitlin is doing incredible work. She's really been a leading voice in this cause. And, Caitlin has had to struggle her whole life with her identity. And, the fact that she's coming out with common sense and sensibleness is much needed in this difficult time because, the problem what we're seeing is with a lot of these trans activists, they don't even think about women. They don't even consider women. They don't even, think about how this is affecting kids. But, people that have been trans like their whole life, older generations, they actually realize, that this is wrong. And there's many people like Caitlin that have been trans for, 20, 30 years that share this, that, women's spaces are very important to protect and that kids should be protected. And, people like Caitlin is really leading the way with this. And, I truly commend her for her bravery because it's not easy for Caitlin as a transgender woman to fight against all of these trans activists because you get labeled so many different hateful words and it's simply unfair. The LGBT community needs to realize, when women are speaking up for their sports, when parents are speaking up about their kids, it's not an attack on anyone's identity. It's not an attack on the LGBT community. No, most people are absolutely fine however somebody identifies. But it's when you take the rights from women away and when you do this to children, that's when we draw a line. So, Caitlin is leading that charge. I'm honored to be working alongside her and, incredible women like yourself, fighting for this because, again, it's nothing to do with attacking trans people. Live your life as an adult, but leave children alone. That's the most important thing.
Oh, amen, Oli. That was so well said. And one more thing, I want to hear about your book. It's coming out soon. Tell listeners how they can learn more.
Well, so I'm very excited. My book, Gender Madness, which is available on Barnes & Noble's Amazon for pre-order, coming out August 1st. This book, I really believe, is going to help so many people that need answers to their questions because there are so many books teaching young people and even trying to indoctrinate parents on how to transition your kid and things like that. So this book actually counters those arguments. It actually details, all of my research. I have studies quoted in the book, basically saying how harmful it is to transition kids. And also I talk about what is influencing these kids because it's really a push within the last 10 years, This is a really recent phenomenon. So I talk about the effects of social media. I talk about how school boards are pushing this on kids in the classrooms, libraries with these books, the drag story hours as well. So I talk about this. I also discuss, the history of transgenderism, how it came about, how it all started, and how did it suddenly become such a recent phenomenon where kids are now being medically transitioned and put on hormones. And, so I'm talking about all the harm. I'm talking about various state laws and how people can get involved to help because people don't always know how they can use their voice. Every single person has a voice. They're able to speak up. So a parent can attend a school board meeting and speak out against this. I know it's hard because they try to cancel the parent. They try to shut them down. But the more parents that speak out, the better. The more people that speak out on social media and say, look, we need to draw a line. We need to protect kids. We need to protect women. That also helps as well. So it's about changing the narrative. And, I'm seeing, fantastically now, so many people speaking out. It's really rising. And finally, people have had enough of this being pushed on kids. So, the book details all of this. It also talks about my personal struggles, how I got there, how other people become trans or struggle with their identity, and how faith played a leading factor in helping me turn my life around. So, I hope this book helps a lot of people.
Well, thank you so much for all you're doing, Oli. And you have quite a story. I encourage everyone to read more about you, to get your book, to watch your engagement with Caitlyn Jenner. I'm excited about your involvement with Caitlyn. I think she's a warrior on this issue. So thank you so much, Oli. I look forward to watching what you do, and hopefully we can have you back again soon.
Thank you so much, Heidi. I really appreciate it.
So parents, grandparents, families, what can you do about all of this? Well, first, get your kids or grandkids out of their school if they are driving this narrative. If you don't know if they are or not, volunteer in the classroom, visit the school library, attend school board meetings, talk to the teachers, and ask a lot of questions. Do not be bullied by counselors or administration. Question their science. Next, monitor your kids or grandkids' screen time like a hawk and talk about the dangers of online with them. Read the book iGen and look into apps like Custodio or NetNanny, but mostly it just takes diligence to stay on top of it. The Apple Store will help you figure out how to adjust their phones. Go into the Genius Bar. And no unbridled access to video games or apps with chat features. That's really dangerous. Next, get your kids or grandkids more involved at church, youth groups, church camps, or with friends that have similar values. Separate your child from toxic friends as soon as you see any red flags. Join a family support group like Jeffco Kids First or Moms for Liberty or CPAN. Trust your instincts. You know your child best. Teach your children that no one should ask them to keep secrets or label themselves. It's okay to be masculine as a girl or feminine as a boy. Get involved in your local school board races. There's many coming up this fall. Those elections matter. Pay attention to your lawmakers. Show up to make your voice heard. Talk to them. Go to the Capitol and testify. Focus your child on giving back, volunteering, helping others. I did a TED Talk about that. It's called The Art of the Comeback. It's available online. Learn all that you can about drugs and keeping your kids and grandkids off of them. Check out Johnny's Ambassadors or One Chance to Grow Up. If your child or grandchild is struggling, get them into a healthy peer support group like Brought to Reality. Just make sure to vet them before they join. And finally, be a good role model for your kids and your grandkids, all the children in your life, with screens, with your health, with your words, with your actions. Fight back against this stuff. They'll remember that you did and know that they can too. I know this has been a really tough topic to tackle, but this podcast is about tackling the toughest things we're facing in society right now, and nothing is more important than protecting our kids. I want to unleash the truth, the lies about everything that's happening right in front of our faces right now. We've got to stand up and speak bravely and boldly and protect our kids. Thank you.